Hey friends, this is Australia, long before 1788, before ships arrived, before borders, before English, when people lived by rhythms passed from mouth to foot, not written, just known. The story you're about to hear follows one small group. They live by a dried plain where the last good rain was seasons ago. Food is harder to find. Fire takes longer to catch. The old paths still exist, but the ground no longer answers the way it used to. There are rules, not written down, not spoken aloud, but everyone follows them, even when they don't know why. Soon they'll notice changes, a well that dries too soon, a sound that goes missing, and a silence growing between people who used to trust each other. This isn't a story of discovery or conquest. It's a memory of a life slowly pulled apart, not by war, but by heat, hunger, and things left unsaid. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment if it helps you rest. Now, put your phone down, pull the blanket higher, and let your mind go quiet. The red land lay vast and timeless, its cracked surface shimmering under the first rays of sunlight, as if the earth itself exhaled a quiet fire. The village, a cluster of low shelters crafted from spinifex grass and eucalyptus bark, nestled in a shallow valley, cradled by ancient eucalyptus trees whose silvery bark peeled in delicate curls. The air was alive with the sharp tang of dew, the dry bite of dust, and the faint, musky trace of kangaroo lingering on a gentle breeze. A distant cockatoo's cry pierced the stillness, its echo weaving into the soft hum of insects, a chorus that spoke of the land's enduring rhythm. The tribe of 40 souls moved with a shared purpose, their lives a tapestry of survival and reverence. Women knelt by grinding stones, their hands shaping seeds into flour. Men tested spears and boomerangs, their low murmurs threading plans. Children scampered through the dust, their laughter bright as they traced imaginary tracks in the earth. Chandri, 32, stood at the valley's rim, his lean frame etched against the rising light, his skin a deep ochre that seemed to blend with the land. His dark eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned the scrub, catching every detail, a bent twig, a scuffed stone, the faint curve of a wallaby's path. As the tribe's lead hunter, his calm was a beacon, his ability to read tracks a gift honed since childhood. Yet today a subtle unease coiled within him. The land's pulse felt uneven, its breath slightly off, like a song faltering mid-note. He gripped his spear, its worn shaft a steady anchor, but his fingers twitched, betraying a doubt he couldn't yet name. His role demanded certainty, but the scrub seemed to whisper secrets he wasn't ready to hear. Kulka, 28, worked near a small fire, her hands grinding ochre seeds with a rhythmic grace, her long hair braided with cords of plant fiber. Her bright eyes, gleaming like river stones under moonlight, held a wisdom that reached into the dream time, her stories a bridge between the tribe and their ancestors. Her talent for reading the land, shifts in wind, the cadence of bird calls was unmatched. And as she glanced at Chandri, her lips pressed into a thoughtful line, sensing the same unease that shadowed him. She paused, her fingers brushing the flower, her gaze drifted to the horizon where the sky shimmered with a heat too fierce for dawn, a sign she filed away but did not voice. Yuri, 16, darted through the village, his lanky frame kicking up clouds of red dust that clung to his wiry legs. His wide grin flashed against his dark skin, a spark that lit the morning, but his reckless energy often outran his judgment. His keen eyes caught details others missed, a claw mark, a displaced pebble, but his curiosity pushed him to test boundaries. "Chandri," he called, tossing a boomerang into the air, catching it with a flourish, his voice cutting through the village's hum. Chandri's eyes narrowed, a silent reprimand for the boy's boldness, but a faint smile tugged at his lips, softened by Yuri's unbridled spirit. The boy was a blade, sharp and untempered, and Chandri felt the weight of shaping him without dulling his edge. The village thrived in its quiet rhythm, women's songs weaving through the air, men's hands steady on their weapons, children's games a mirror of their elders' skills. The shelters stood resilient, their woven walls a testament to the tribe's unity, each one a story of shared labor. The red land stretched beyond, its vastness a cradle and a challenge, holding the tribe in its embrace. Yet as Chandri's gaze lingered on the scrub, a single leaf fell from a eucalyptus, drifting too early, too slow, and his chest tightened with a premonition he couldn't grasp. Kalka's eyes met his across the clearing, a silent acknowledgement of the land's whisper, while Yuri's laughter rang out, oblivious to the subtle shift. The tribe's harmony held, but beneath it, the earth's heartbeat faltered, its secrets poised to unfold. The village's morning hum still echoed in the air as Chandri led the hunting party into the scrub, the red earth warm beneath their bare feet, its cracks like ancient scars under the sun's steady gaze. The eucalyptus trees cast long shadows, their leaves whispering with a breeze that carried the dry tang of spinifex, the faint musk of animal sweat, and a subtle, unsettling staleness that Chandri couldn't place. His spear, its blackened tip gleaming, rested lightly in his calloused hand, his sharp eyes tracing the faint etchings of kangaroo tracks, their edges softened by the wind's restless touch. Beside him walked Miri, his broad shoulders steady, a boomerang tucked into a woven belt, his weathered face set with quiet focus. Binda, wiry and swift, scanned the underbrush, his fingers twitching with the readiness of a man who trusted his instincts. Yuri trailed close, his lanky frame a bundle of restless energy, his bright eyes darting from track to tree, his boomerang clutched tightly as if it could quell his impatience. Chandri paused near a cluster of acacias, their golden blooms stark against the red dirt, and crouched to touch the earth. His fingers brushed a scuffed patch where a kangaroo had grazed, the soil still warm, its scent faintly sweet with crushed grass. He inhaled deeply, letting the land's breath, dust, decay, and a hint of distant water guide him. The breeze shifted, too sharp, too erratic, echoing the unease that had stirred in him at the village's edge. The land's rhythm felt off, a note missing in its song, but he pushed the thought aside, his calm a shield for the group. "This way," he said, his voice low, pointing to a gully where the tracks deepened, their curves sharp with recent passage. The hunters moved as one, their steps silent, bodies low, a silent pact with the land's spirits, guided by Chandri's uncanny ability to read its signs, broken twigs, scuffed stones, the faint thud of a hop. Yuri, however, was a spark in the silence. His impatience simmered, his feet scuffing the earth louder than necessary, each step a small defiance of the hunt's discipline. His bright eyes flicked to every rustle, his grip on the boomerang tightening. "We're moving too slow," he muttered, his voice slicing through the stillness, loud enough to draw Miri's frown and Benda's sharp glance. Ignoring the unspoken rule of silence, a mark of respect for the prey and the land, Yuri surged ahead, his long strides breaking the group's rhythm, his boomerang raised as if to strike at an unseen target. Chandri's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing to slits as he grabbed Yuri's arm, his grip firm but controlled, like a father steadying a wayward child. "You'll scare the prey," he said, his voice a low growl, edged with frustration, but tempered with patience. His face, usually serene, was taut, a flicker of concern breaking through as he held Yuri's gaze, searching for understanding. Yuri's grin faltered, his cheeks flushing a deeper shade against his dark skin, his bright eyes flashing with a storm of emotions, defiance, shame, and a burning need to prove himself. "I saw a track," he protested, pointing to a faint mark Chandri had already noted, his voice quieter but stubborn. He tugged his arm free, his posture stiff, his fingers tightening on his boomerang as if it could anchor his pride. Chandri exhaled slowly, his expression softening but unyielding, his dark eyes holding Yuri's until the boy looked away, his lips twitching with suppressed words. "Seeing isn't enough," he said, his tone measured, a lesson woven into his words. "You must feel the land's rhythm, honor its silence. Act too soon, and you break the balance." Miri and Binda exchanged a glance, their silence heavy with agreement, though Miri's faint nod hinted at a trace of sympathy for Yuri's fire. The hunt pressed on, weaving through the scrub, the air thick with the drone of cicadas and the rustle of dry leaves. Chandri's senses sharpened, catching a soft thud ahead, the faint snap of a twig. He signaled, his hand slicing through the air, and the hunters fanned out, their bodies blending into the acacia's shadows. In a clearing, a large male kangaroo grazed, its gray-brown hide taut over powerful muscles, its ears twitching. Chandri's breath slowed, his spear raised in a fluid arc, his body still as stone. The kangaroo froze, its head snapped up, eyes wide with instinct. Chandri's spear flew, a streak of dark wood that pierced its flank with a dull thud. Miri's boomerang spun through the air, a low hum, striking the beast's side, and it staggered. Binda darted forward, his knife flashing to ensure a swift, respectful kill, his movements a quiet prayer to the animal's spirit. The hunters gathered around the fallen kangaroo, their breaths heavy in the still air. Chandri knelt, his hand resting on its warm hide, his lips moving in a soft chant of thanks, honoring the life given to sustain the tribe, a sacred act rooted in the Dreamtime's balance. Yuri watched, his earlier defiance replaced by awe, his bright eyes tracing the blood seeping into the red earth, his hands trembling slightly, not from fear but from the moment's weight. He glanced at Chandri, seeking approval, but Chandri's face was unreadable, his gaze lifting to the scrub, where a single bird's call faltered, its echo cut short, pricking his senses. The group bound the kangaroo with plant fiber cords, its weight shared among them, and turned back toward the village, the red dust clinging to their feet like a reminder of the land's unyielding presence. The scent of roasted kangaroo clung to the air, a warm thread weaving through the village as the tribe gathered around a central fire, its flames casting a golden glow across the red earth. The shelters of spinifex and bark stood sentinel, their shadows flickering like spirits in the twilight, while the eucalyptus trees loomed beyond, their leaves whispering secrets to the stars above. The tribe's return from the hunt had kindled a quiet celebration, the kangaroo's gifts shared on broad leaves passed hand to hand, each bite a testament to the land's bounty. The air hummed with soft laughter and murmurs, the crackle of the fire blending with the distant drone of cicadas, a rhythm that anchored the tribe's unity after the day's labors. Kalka sat at the fire's heart, her braided hair catching the light, her face serene yet commanding, like a river reflecting the night sky. Her hands, still dusted with ochre, rested on her knees as she began a Dreamtime story, her voice a melody that wove through the flame's crackle. "When the great serpent moved," she said, her bright eyes lifting to the stars, "it carved the rivers, its coils shaping the land's bones. It sang to the stars, binding us to their light." The tribe leaned closer, children's eyes wide with wonder, elders nodding with the weight of countless tellings. Kalka's storytelling was a sacred thread, tying the tribe to their ancestors, her words painting a world where the land and its people were one. Chandri sat across the circle, his lean frame relaxed but alert, his spear resting beside him like a silent guardian. His dark eyes softened as he listened, but the unease from the hunt, the faltering bird call, the erratic breeze, lingered like a shadow in his chest. His role as hunter demanded focus, yet Kalka's story stirred memories of his own initiation when the land's voice had seemed clearer. He glanced at Yuri, whose lanky frame swayed slightly, his bright eyes locked on Kalka, his usual grin replaced by rapt attention. Chandri recognized the boy's hunger for understanding, but feared its recklessness, a spark that could disrupt the tribe's harmony. As Kalka described the serpent gifting fire to the people, Yuri's hand shot up, his voice cutting through the hush like a stone through water. "Why fire?" he asked, his tone earnest, too sharp, his eyes blazing with curiosity. "Why not water or stars?" The question hung heavy, the fire's glow illuminating shocked faces. Angura, her white hair stark against the dark, stiffened, her clouded eyes piercing Yuri with a look that could silence a storm. "You dare question the ancestors' will?" she said, her voice low and sharp, her posture rigid as she leaned forward. The children froze, their wonder replaced by unease, and a murmur rippled through the tribe, a crack in the night's unity. Yuri's cheeks flushed, his fingers digging into the dirt, his bright eyes flickering with defiance and shame. His lips parted, a retort forming, but he swallowed it, his shoulders hunching under Angura's gaze. Chandri leaned forward, his jaw tight, his voice firm but tempered. "Respect the story, Yuri," he said, his dark eyes holding the boy's, a silent plea woven into his words. "It carries our truth." His face softened, a flicker of sympathy breaking through, for he saw his younger self in Yuri's boldness, yet knew the danger of challenging tradition. Kalka paused, her eyes narrowing slightly, a faint smile curving her lips as she resumed, her voice steady, guiding the tribe back to the Dreamtime's embrace. The tension lingered, a subtle fracture in the firelight's warmth. The tribe sang, their voices rising in a slow chant that echoed the land's heartbeat, children nestling closer to their mothers, elders' faces softening. Chandri's gaze drifted to the stars, their light flickering as if uncertain, and the unease in his chest tightened. Yuri's question echoed his own unspoken doubts about the land, its faltering rhythm, the signs he couldn't ignore. Kalka's eyes met his across the fire, a shared recognition of the boy's fire and the land's whispers, a warning that the tribe's harmony rested on fragile ground. The firelight's warmth still lingered in the village's memory, the echoes of Kalka's Dreamtime story and Yuri's bold question threading through the tribe's quiet routines. The red earth, warm under the sun's steady climb, bore the faint imprints of last night's gathering, its cracks glowing like embers in the light. The eucalyptus trees stood tall, their leaves whispering in a breeze that carried the dry scent of spinifex and a faint, unseasonal staleness, a subtle discord that prickled the senses. The tribe of 40 moved with purpose, their shelters of bark and grass humming with activity. Women wove baskets, their fingers deft with plant fibers. Men carved boomerangs, their low murmurs weaving plans. Children darted through the dust, their laughter a bright counterpoint to the village's rhythm. Nura, 60, stood at the village's edge, her stooped frame radiating authority, her white hair tied back with kangaroo sinew, stark against her weathered skin. Her clouded eyes, sharp despite their haze, surveyed a group of children gathered before her, their small faces smudged with red dust, alight with curiosity. They sat cross-legged, clutching sticks to mimic their elders' tools, as Nura's voice, firm yet rich with wisdom, recounted the land's lessons. "This mulga," she said, holding a gray-green sprig, "heals a cut if chewed, but greed twists your belly." Her hands, gnarled but steady, passed the sprig to a girl who nodded eagerly, her small fingers fumbling to mimic Nura's grip. Nura's teaching was a sacred duty, her strictness a shield for the tribe's survival, ensuring the young carried the land's knowledge as surely as spears. Talandri leaned against a eucalyptus trunk, his lean frame still, his spear balanced across his shoulder. His dark eyes traced Nura's movements, her words stirring memories of his own lessons under her stern gaze. Yuri's outburst at the firelight lingered in his mind, a spark that echoed his own youthful questions, yet threatened the tribe's unity. His role as hunter demanded he guide Yuri, but the land's faltering rhythm, the faltering bird call, the shimmering sky gnawed at him, a puzzle he couldn't solve. His fingers brushed the spear's shaft, grounding him, but his brow creased with the weight of balancing tradition and the boy's fire. Yuri hovered at the group's edge, his lanky frame shifting restlessly, his bright eyes fixed on Nura's lesson. His hands twitched, itching to grasp the mulga, his curiosity burning despite the sting of last night's rebuke. He edged closer, his bare feet scuffing the dirt, drawn by the promise of knowledge. When Nura pointed to a faint wallaby track, explaining its curve, Yuri's restraint snapped. "It's a young one, isn't it?" he called, his voice eager, pointing to the track's shallow depth. "Like the ones we hunted." The children turned, some giggling, others wide-eyed, but Nura's face hardened, her eyes pinning Yuri like a spear. "You speak out of turn," she said, her voice low and cutting, her posture rigid as she stepped toward him. "These lessons are for the young, not for those who think they know." Yuri's cheeks flushed, his fingers digging into his palms, his bright eyes flickering with shame and defiance. His lips parted, a retort rising, but he bit it back, his shoulders hunching under Nora's gaze. The children fell silent, their curiosity replaced by unease, sensing the weight of her disapproval. Tonji straightened, his jaw tight, torn between intervening and respecting Nora's authority. He took a step, then paused, his hand brushing the eucalyptus bark, its rough texture steadying him. Yuri's eyes darted to him, seeking approval or reproach, but Tonji's face remained unreadable, a flicker of sympathy softening his gaze. Nora resumed, pointing to a cluster of kwandong fruit, their red skins bright against the scrub, her voice steadying the children's focus. The village hummed on, women's songs weaving through the air, men's hands sure on their weapons. Tonji's gaze drifted to the horizon, where a single cloud hung too still, its edges frayed like a warning. The land's whispers, Nora's lessons, Yuri's restlessness, the stale breeze, wove together, a pattern he couldn't yet see, but his chest tightened with the sense that the tribe's harmony rested on fragile ground. The echo of Nura's stern lesson still hung in the village, Yuri's chastened silence a quiet ripple through the tribe's rhythm. The red earth, warm under the sun's steady climb, bore the faint tracks of the children's lesson, its cracks a map of the land's ancient endurance. The eucalyptus trees loomed, their silvery bark curling, their leaves whispering in a breeze that carried the dry scent of spinifex and a faint, unsettling staleness as if the air itself held its breath. The tribe moved with purpose, women shaping seed into flower, men testing spears, children playing under watchful eyes, yet the memory of Yuri's boldness and Chandri's unease wove a subtle tension through the village's harmony. Kalka stood at the outskirts, her braided hair swaying as she tilted her head, her bright eyes scanning the scrub where a cluster of wattle bloomed, their golden flowers vivid weeks too early. Her hands, dusted with ochre, clenched at her sides, her brow furrowing as she felt the wind's sharp westward bite, wrong for this season, cutting where it should have flowed. The land's signs were clear to her trained senses. The wattle's untimely bloom, the wind's erratic pulse, the absence of a familiar honey-eater's call. Her heart quickened, a quiet urgency rising. She was the tribe's seer, her dreamtime stories rooted in the land's truth, and these whispers spoke of a shift she couldn't ignore. Her lips pressed tight, her gaze drifting to the horizon where the sky shimmered with a heat too fierce, a mirror to the unease Chandri had carried since the hunt. She sought Chandri, finding him near a shelter, his lean frame bent over a spear, his dark eyes clouded as he sharpened its tip with slow, deliberate strokes. "The wind is wrong," Kalka said, her voice low, urgent, cutting through the village's hum. "The wattle blooms too soon, Chandri, the land speaking." Her bright eyes searched his, her posture taut, a silent plea for him to listen. Chandri's hand stilled, his jaw tightening as he met her gaze, the weight of her words stirring the doubts he'd tried to bury. The faltering bird call, the shimmering sky, the uneven rhythm. "The land shifts," he said, his tone steady but hollow, a leader's attempt to hold hope. Yet his fingers tightened on the spear, his calm mask cracking, revealing a flicker of fear that Kalka's instincts were true. The tribe prepared a small ritual to honor the land, a gesture of thanks for its bounty, gathering in a swept clearing where the red earth lay smooth, a low fire burning at its heart. Kalka led, her face painted with swirling ochre patterns, her arms tracing the wind's path. Her chant rose, a melody of gratitude and supplication, the tribe joining in, their voices a pulse that seemed to echo the earth's heartbeat. Women's ochre designs gleamed, men's clapsticks set a sharp rhythm, and children watched, swaying to the song. Nura stood at the edge, her white hair stark, her clouded eyes solemn, anchoring the ritual's weight. Yuri, forbidden from joining until his initiation, lingered behind a eucalyptus, his lanky frame half hidden, his bright eyes drinking in the dance's grace, the fire's glow, the ochre's swirl. His fingers twitched, his heart racing with awe and frustration, the ritual's power pulling him despite Nura's rebuke. He stepped closer, a twig snapping underfoot, and Nura's head snapped toward him, her gaze piercing the dusk. Yuri froze, his breath catching, his cheeks flushing as he ducked back, his defiance tempered by fear of her wrath. Kalka's chant faltered briefly, her eyes flickering to the sound, a faint smile curving her lips as she sensed Yuri's longing. Chandri stood at the ritual's edge, his spear planted, his dark eyes tracing Kalka's dance. Her warnings echoed in his mind, stirring the unease he'd felt since the hunt. The fire's shadows twisted, unnaturally sharp, and a chill breeze cut through, pricking his skin. The ritual ended, the tribe dispersing, their voices fading. Kalka's gaze met Chandri, a silent question lingering, while Yuri slipped away, his heart heavy with unspoken yearning. The land's whispers grew louder, a puzzle Chandri could no longer dismiss. The ritual's chant still lingered in the village's air, Kalka's dance and the fire's glow, a vivid memory as the tribe prepared for Yiri's initiation, a sacred rite to mark his step toward manhood. The red earth, warm from the sun's steady climb, bore the faint marks of the ritual clearing, its cracks a testament to the land's endurance. The eucalyptus trees stood sentinel, their leaves whispering in a breeze that carried the dry scent of spinifex and a sharp, unseasonal chill, a subtle discord that echoed Kalka's warnings. The tribe moved with quiet reverence, their shelters humming with purpose. Women painted ochre designs, men readied clapsticks, and children watched with wide eyes, sensing the weight of the moment. Yet beneath the harmony, Tiandri's unease and Yiri's restless longing wove a thread of tension, tying the village to the land's faltering rhythm. Yiri knelt in a sacred clearing beyond the village, marked by ancient stones smoothed by time, his lanky frame rigid, his bright eyes wide with awe and strain. The fire at the clearing's center burned low, its embers casting a soft glow across his dark skin, glistening with sweat despite the cool air. His hands clenched against his thighs, fighting the urge to speak, his lips pressed tight under the ritual's demand for 3 days of silence, a trial to listen to the land's voice and absorb the tribe's teachings. His heart raced, his curiosity a fire that burned against the restraint, each crackle of the fire, each whisper of the wind, a challenge to his resolve. Kalka stood before him, her braided hair adorned with white feathers, her face painted with ochre swirls that seemed to pulse in the firelight. Her voice, soft yet commanding, wove the ritual's meaning, her hands tracing arcs in the air, mimicking the paths of stars and rivers. Her role as guide was sacred, her wisdom a beacon for Yiri's untested spirit, but she sensed his struggle, her faint smile a blend of encouragement and warning. Her own unease, stirred by the wattle's early bloom and the wind's wrong direction, lingered, but she focused on Yiri, her movements steady. Tiandri stood nearby, his lean frame silhouetted against the fire, his spear planted in the earth like a sentinel. His dark eyes followed Yiri, his face a mask of calm, but his thoughts churned with the weight of his role as supervisor. Yiri's restlessness echoed his own youth, a time when the land's voice had seemed clearer, but the signs he'd felt since the hunt, the faltering bird call, the shimmering sky pressed harder now, a puzzle he couldn't ignore. He wondered if Yiri's silence might reveal what he could not, his fingers brushing the spear shaft, grounding him against the rising doubt. Yiri's first night was a battle within, the fire's crackle and elders' chants pressing against his resolve. Questions burned. Why silence? What did the land hide? But he bit his lip, tasting salt, his bright eyes darting to Kalka, then to Yandri, seeking reassurance. The second day brought hunger, the scent of roasted emu from the village taunting him, but he stayed rooted, his hands tracing patterns in the dust, echoing Kalka's gestures. By the third day, exhaustion dulled his restlessness, and a strange calm settled, as if the land's pulse had seeped into him. He noticed the stars' faint flicker, the wind's uneven cadence, subtle signs that mirrored Kalka's concerns. The ritual ended with the tribe's chant rising, vibrating through the clearing. Kalka placed a hand on Yiri's shoulder, her touch warm, her bright eyes proud. "You've begun," she said, her voice a quiet anchor. Tiandri stepped forward, his nod heavy with approval, but his gaze lingered on the sky where a star seemed to falter, its light unsteady. Yiri stood, his legs trembling, his heart swelling with pride, yet hollow with unanswered questions. The tribe's recognition was a weight, not a release, and he wondered if the land's silence had taught him enough. As the fire died, a lone insect's chirp broke, its rhythm lost, and Tiandri's chest tightened, The land's warnings, now a chorus he could no longer dismiss. The sacred clearing's echoes, where Yuri had knelt in silence, still lingered in the tribe's collective memory, the weight of his initiation binding them closer to the land's spirit. The red earth, warm from the sun's steady climb, bore the faint imprints of that ritual, its cracks deepening as if the land itself strained under an unseen burden. The eucalyptus trees stood tall, their leaves whispering in a breeze that carried the dry scent at spinifex and a sharp, unseasonal chill, a subtle discord that mirrored the faltering stars Yuri had noticed. The village hummed with quiet purpose, women grinding seeds, men sharpening spears, children tracing tracks, yet the undercurrent of Chiandri's unease and Kalka's warnings wove a thread of tension through their routines, tying the tribe to the land's growing restlessness. Kalka stood at the village's edge, her braided hair swaying, her bright eyes fixed on the horizon where a flock of honey-eaters should have traced their annual path across the sky. Her hands, still flecked with ochre from the ritual, clenched at her sides, her brow furrowing as the sky remained empty, a vast canvas of unbroken blue. The absence was a wound, louder than any storm, and her heart thudded with certainty. The land's rhythm was unraveling, its signs now unmistakable. Her lips pressed tight, her posture rigid, she scanned the scrub, noting the wattle's early bloom, the wind's wrong direction, and now this silence, a chorus of warnings she could no longer keep to herself. She sought Chiandri, finding him near a shelter, his lean frame bent over a boomerang, his dark eyes clouded with the unease that had deepened since Yuri's trial. His fingers worked the wood with mechanical precision, but his gaze flicked upward, as if seeking answers in the sky. "The honey-eaters are gone," Chiandri said, her voice low, urgent, cutting through the village's hum. "They always come, Chiandri, always." Her bright eyes searched his, a quiet plea in her stance. Chiandri's hand stilled, his jaw tightening as her words settled into him, stirring the doubts he had tried to dismiss. The faltering bird call, the shimmering sky, the uneven wind. "Maybe they flew another path," he said, his tone steady but hollow, a leader's attempt to hold hope. Yet his fingers twitched, betraying his fear that Kalka's instincts were true. He called Miri and Binda, their familiar forms joining him with silent nods, their weathered faces set with trust. Yuri, lingering nearby, his lanky frame tense with curiosity, edged closer, his bright eyes darting between Kalka and Chiandri. "I'll come," he said, his voice eager, too quick, his hands gripping his boomerang. Chiandri's brow creased, a flicker of frustration crossing his face, but he nodded, sensing Yuri's need to act. The group set out, their steps light on the cracked earth, weaving through acacias toward a small stream that had always flowed steady, a lifeline for the tribe. The air grew heavier, the scent of dry spinifex mingling with a stale tang, as if the earth held its breath. The stream, when reached, was a shadow of itself, its clear ribbon reduced to a sluggish trickle, its banks caked with drying mud that cracked like old skin. Chiandri knelt, his fingers tracing the parched earth, his heart sinking as he felt its dryness. Kalka's face tightened, her bright eyes scanning the barren banks, where no frogs croaked, no reeds swayed. "This isn't right," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper, her hands trembling as she touched a lily. Yuri kicked at the mud, his grin absent, his voice rising. "We should go farther, find another stream." His voice was bold, reckless, his eyes blazing with a need to solve the crisis. Chiandri's gaze snapped to him, sharp but weary. "Too far, Yuri. Too dangerous." His tone was firm, but his eyes held doubt, weighing the boy's idea. Back at the village, the tribe gathered, their voices low, faces etched with concern. Noura stood among them, her white hair stark, her clouded eyes unyielding. "The rains will come," she said, her voice a command, silencing murmurs. "We wait, as always." Yuri's fists clenched, his lips parting, but Kalka's hand on his shoulder stilled him, her touch both warning and comfort. Chiandri stood silent, his spear heavy, his thoughts churning. The empty sky, the drying stream, they were signs he could no longer dismiss, yet Nura's certainty anchored the tribe's hope. As they dispersed, a lone insect's chirp faltered, its rhythm broken, and Chiandri's chest tightened, the land's warnings now a drumbeat in his soul. The village still hummed with the echoes of Ngura's firm command to wait for rain, her words a tether holding the tribe to hope, despite the drying stream's grim truth. The red earth, once warm with life, now burned under the sun's relentless glare, its cracks widening like wounds, each one a silent cry from the land. The eucalyptus trees drooped, their leaves brittle, their scent sharper, mingling with a heavy dusty tang that clung to the air, a sign of the deepening drought. The tribe moved with strained purpose, women rationing seeds, men mending tools with slower hands, children's laughter muted as they sensed the adults' unease. Chandri's doubts, Kalka's warnings, and Yiri's restless energy wove a fragile web, binding the village to the land's faltering pulse. Kalka stood near the ritual clearing, her braided hair dusted with red earth, her bright eyes scanning the horizon where the sky shimmered with unnatural heat. Her hands gripped a woven basket, her knuckles taut, as she felt the land's fever, ground too hot, air too dry, no trace of the honey-eater's return. Her heart thudded, her dreamtime wisdom whispering of a time when the land demanded movement, not waiting. She found Chandri by the village's edge, his lean frame tense, his dark eyes fixed on the cracked earth, his spear idle in his hand. "We can't stay," Kalka said, her voice low but firm. "The land's dying, Chandri. We must find water." Her bright eyes held his, a plea cutting through her calm. Chandri's jaw tightened, his fingers twitching, Kalka's words clashing with Ngura's certainty. "Ngura says the ancestors guide us to wait," he replied, his tone heavy, torn between trust in tradition and the stream's dry truth. His gaze flickered, doubt cracking his leader's mask. Ngura, unyielding, gathered the tribe, her white hair stark, her clouded eyes fierce, her words a command. "Our ancestors endured, we stay." Her words silenced murmurs, but Yiri, standing at the crowd's edge, his lanky frame rigid, his fists clenched, his bright eyes blazing with frustration. The stream's mud, Kalka's warnings, the empty sky, they screamed for action, not waiting. His heart pounded, his initiation's weight urging him to prove himself. Defying Ngura's orders, he slipped away at dusk, his boomerang tucked under his arm, his steps silent as he headed toward a distant stream whispered of in elder tales, one beyond the acacias. The scrub stretched harsh and silent, the air thick with dust, the ground scorching even in the fading light. Yiri's bare feet burned, but he pressed on, his bright eyes scanning for tracks. He found the stream bed, dry, its banks littered with abandoned bird nests, kangaroo prints leading away, a stark sign of life fleeing. His chest tightened, fear mixing with defiance, his hands trembling as he traced the cracked earth. A rustle startled him, and Chandri emerged, his face a storm of anger and worry, his dark eyes blazing. "You defy us all," he snapped, his voice low, his grip tight on Yiri's shoulder. Yiri flinched, his bright eyes flashing shame and resolve. "The animals are gone," he said, pointing to the tracks, his voice steady despite his fear. Chandri's anger faltered, his gaze following Yiri's hand, the truth of the empty stream bed sinking in. His hand loosened, his face softening, but his voice remained firm. "You risk too much," he said, his eyes searching Yiri's, torn between pride and fear. The land's heat pressed around them, a lone leaf falling brittle from an acacia, and Chandri's chest tightened, The drought's reality now a weight he could no longer deny. The village bore the scars of Yiri's defiance. His reckless trek to the dry stream bed, a wound in the tribe's fragile unity. Chandri's anger, a lingering echo in the dust-choked air. The red earth, once a cradle of life, now burned beneath a sun that glared without mercy, its cracks sprawling like veins of despair, each fissure a plea from the land's parched heart. The eucalyptus trees, their silvery bark peeling in brittle curls, drooped under the weight of a sky too blue, too empty, their leaves whispering a faint, mournful rustle. The air was heavy with the acrid tang of scorched spinifex, dust that stung eyes, and a strange metallic bitterness, as if the earth exhaled its own decay. The tribe of 40 souls moved with a weary cadence, women's hands trembling as they rationed dwindling seeds, men's eyes distant as they mended spears, children's laughter replaced by hushed whispers, their small faces smudged with worry. Chandri's gnawing doubt, Kalka's urgent warnings, and Yiri's burning shame wove a taut web, binding the village to the land's anguished cry, its pulse now a faltering drumbeat. Kalka stood alone by the ritual clearing, where embers from Yiri's initiation still smoldered, her braided hair dusted with red earth, catching the last rays of a sun that offered no comfort. Her bright eyes, like polished river stones, traced the horizon, searching for the honey-eaters that never came, the absence a knife twisting in her chest. Her hands, calloused yet graceful, clutched a small ochre stone, its cool weight an anchor against the land's fever, ground too hot, air too dry, wattle blooming weeks too early. Her heart thudded, a rhythm of fear and resolve, her dreamtime wisdom whispering of ancestors who walked through desolation to find life. She saw their shadows in the dust, felt their courage in her bones, yet her lips trembled, the weight of her role as seer pressing down. Could she guide her people through this silence, this land that seemed to turn against them? Her breath caught, her posture rigid, but her eyes burned with a quiet fire, a vow to weave hope from despair. She called the tribe to gather, her voice a soft command that cut through the village's murmur. They settled around a low fire, its flames weak but stubborn, casting flickering shadows on faces hollowed by hunger and fear. Chandri sat near, his lean frame taut, his spear across his knees, its worn shaft a lifeline. His dark eyes, shadowed by sleepless nights, flickered with doubt, the dry stream bed's truth clashing with Noura's insistence on waiting. He remembered his own youth, when the land's voice was clear, but now it stuttered, and he feared his leadership faltered too. His fingers traced the spear's grain, grounding him, yet his chest tightened, Kalka's warnings and Yiri's recklessness pulling him between tradition and survival. Kalka began her dreamtime story, her voice a melody that wove through the fire's crackle, rich and resonant, like water over stones. When the land turned to dust, the emu spirit rose, its steps carving paths through despair. It led our ancestors, through fire and shadow, to a spring hidden in the earth's heart, teaching that to honor the land is to walk its hardest paths. Her words painted a vivid tapestry, dust storms, weary feet, the spring's cool embrace, stirring gasps from children, nods from elders, and a quiet hope in weary eyes. Nora, her white hair stark against the firelight, sat rigid, her clouded eyes narrowing, sensing a challenge to her ancestral trust. Her gnarled hands clenched, her face a mask of stern resolve, yet a flicker of doubt crossed her heart, stirred by Kalka's tale of movement. Yiri, at the circle's edge, his lanky frame hunched, felt the story pierce his shame, its fire kindling a spark in his soul. His bright eyes, dimmed by Chandri's rebuke and his own guilt, now blazed with a desperate need to mend his fault. His hands, still gritty from the streambed's dust, trembled as he stood, his voice steady but raw, a boy on the cusp of manhood. "Nora," he said, his gaze locking with hers, unflinching despite his pounding heart, "I broke your trust, and I'm sorry. But Kalka's story shows we must act. Let me join Chandri to find water, to save us." His words hung heavy, the fire's glow illuminating his earnest face, sweat beading on his brow, and his shoulders squared against the tribe's stunned silence. Nora's lips parted, a sharp rebuke rising, but Kalka's gentle nod, her bright eyes warm with encouragement, stilled her. Chandri's jaw clenched, pride swelling for Yeri's courage, yet fear gnawed at him. The boy's boldness could lead to ruin. His dark eyes met Yeri's, a silent acknowledgement of his growth, but his hand tightened on his spear, the weight of leading a search pressing down. Nora exhaled, her clouded eyes softening, her voice low, reluctant. "The ancestors guide us, but perhaps they speak through you. Chandri will lead a small group." The tribe's murmurs rose, hope flickering like the fire's embers. But as they stood, a sudden wind roared through, sharp and unnatural, carrying thick red dust that stung eyes, coated tongues, and dimmed the flames. Kalka's hands clenched her ochre stone, her heart racing, the dust a warning of the land's wrath. Chandri's gaze locked with hers, a vow sealed in silence, while Yeri's eyes lifted to the dust-choked sky, his resolve aflame against the gathering storm. The firelit promise of Kalka's dreamtime story and Yeri's bold apology still glowed in the village's heart. Gura's reluctant consent, a fragile bridge between tradition and survival. The red earth, scorched and fractured, lay like a wounded beast under a sun that burned without relent, its cracks gaping wider, each one a silent scream of thirst. The eucalyptus trees, their bark curling like old scars, sagged under a sky too vast, too empty, their leaves brittle, whispering a faint dirge in a breeze that carried the acrid sting of dust and a faint, sour decay, as if the land mourned its own fading pulse. The tribe's hope flickered, their movements slow, women's hands trembling over sparse seeds, men's eyes distant as they gripped worn spears, children's faces taut with unspoken fear. Chandri's resolve, Kalka's vision, and Yeri's newfound purpose wove a taut thread, binding the village to the land's desperate cry, its rhythm now a stuttering heartbeat. Chandri led the small group, Miri, Binda, and Yeri, beyond the village's edge, his lean frame steady despite the weight of leadership pressing his chest. His dark eyes, shadowed by doubt, scanned the scrub, the dry streambed's truth haunting him. He felt the ancestors' gaze, Gura's trust, Kalka's plea, each a burden he carried like his spear, its shaft worn smooth by years of faith. Yet the land's silence, the absent honey-eaters, the wattle's early bloom, gnawed at him, a fear that his skills might fail his people. His jaw clenched, his steps deliberate, he led the group through acacias, their golden blooms faded, toward a distant valley whispered in old songs, a place where water might still hide. Yeri walked close, his lanky frame taut with eagerness, his bright eyes darting over the cracked earth seeking tracks. His heart pounded, shame from his defiance now fuel for redemption. His initiation's silence had taught him to listen, and he felt the land's pain, its heat searing his bare feet, its dust coating his throat. He gripped his boomerang, his fingers twitching, desperate to prove his worth to Chandri, to Gura, to himself. His lips parted, questions rising, but he bit them back, his gaze steady, a boy striving to be a man. Miri, broad-shouldered and silent, his boomerang tucked in his belt, watched Yeri with a faint smile, sensing his fire. Binda, wiry and alert, scanned the scrub, his knife ready, his trust in Cheandry absolute. The land grew harsher, the scrub thinning to skeletal bushes, the air thick with a metallic tang, the sun a relentless hammer. Chandry's senses sharpened, catching a faint rustle, a shadow flickering among the rocks. A dingo, lean and hungry, its amber eyes glinting, stalked them, its pack circling, their low growls a chilling hum. Cheandry signaled, his hands slicing the air, the group tightening, spears raised. Yuri's heart leapt, fear mingled with instinct. His bright eyes caught a scuffed pebble, a bent twig, tracks the others missed. "There," he whispered, pointing to a narrow gully where the pack lurked. His voice was steady, his hand guiding Cheandry's spear. Cheandry nodded, pride flashing in his eyes, and the group shifted, their movements a silent dance, driving the dingoes back with shouts and raised weapons, the pack retreating into the dust. The valley, when reached, was a barren scar, its earth cracked like old leather, its promise of water a cruel lie. A small puddle, murky and shallow, lay at its heart, barely enough for a day. Cheandry knelt, his fingers tracing the damp edge, his chest tightening as he tasted its bitter silt. His dark eyes met Yuri's, the boy's hope dimming, his shoulders sagging. "It's not enough," Cheandry said. His voice low, raw, the drought's truth, a blade in his gut. Yuri's fists clenched, his bright eyes blazing with defiance, but his silence spoke of growth, his initiation's lessons anchoring him. Miri and Binda exchanged glances, their faces grim, their trust in Cheandry unshaken but heavy. As they turned back, the wind howled, sharp and sudden, stirring red dust that stung their skin, a warning of the land's wrath. Cheandry's spear felt heavier, his heart torn between duty and despair. The valley's failure a mirror to his fears. Yuri walked beside him, his bright eyes fixed on the horizon, his resolve a spark in the gathering dark, the land's challenge now his own. The bitter taste of the valley's meager puddle still lingered on Chandry's tongue, the group's failure a heavy shroud over the village's fragile hope. The red earth, scorched and splintered, lay like a battlefield under a sun that burned with unrelenting fury, its cracks sprawling like scars, each one a testament to the land's dying breath. The eucalyptus trees, their bark peeling in brittle flakes, leaned wearily, their leaves whispering a faint, anguished lament in a breeze that carried the acrid bite of dust, the sour stench of decay, and a strange metallic tang, as if the earth bled its own despair. The tribe of 40 souls moved with a strained hush, women's hands faltering over sparse seeds, men's gazes hollow as they clutched worn spears, children's eyes wide with unspoken dread. Chandry's despair, Kulka's resolve, and Yuri's defiant spark wove a taut thread, binding the village to the land's anguished cry, its pulse now a faltering whisper. Chandry stood before the tribe, his lean frame rigid, his spear planted in the cracked earth like a defiant stake. His dark eyes, shadowed by sleepless nights, met their expectant gazes, the weight of leadership a stone in his chest. The valley's failure gnawed at him, a mirror to his fear that the ancestors' guidance had faded, leaving him to navigate a land that no longer spoke clearly. His voice, low and raw, carried the bitter truth. The valley held only a puddle, not enough to sustain us. Murmurs rippled, faces tightening, hope fraying like old sinew. Ngura, her white hair stark against the firelight, rose, her clouded eyes fierce, her gnarled hands clenched. "We stay," she declared, her voice a command, forged in ancestral trust. "The rains will come, as they always have." Her words anchored some, their nods resolute, but others shifted uneasily, their eyes drifting to Chandri, seeking a path beyond tradition. Yuri, at the crowd's edge, his lanky frame trembling with frustration, felt Ngura's words choke his hope. His bright eyes, burning with the valley's dust and his own resolve, blazed with defiance. His heart pounded, his initiation's lessons clashing with the land's stark reality. The dry stream, the fleeing animals, the silent sky. He stepped forward, his voice sharp, raw with youth's fire. "Waiting will kill us," he cried, facing Ngura, his hands slashing the air. "The land's dying, and we must move." His words struck like sparks, the tribe gasping, some nodding, others recoiling. Ngura's face hardened, her clouded eyes piercing Yuri like a spear. "You defy the ancestors' will?" she hissed, her voice low, venomous, her posture rigid with fury. Yuri's cheeks flushed, his fists clenching, shame and anger warring within, but his gaze held, a boy daring to challenge an elder's iron will. Chandri's jaw tightened, his dark eyes flickering between Yuri's boldness and Ngura's wrath, torn between pride and duty. His hand gripped his spear, its shaft grounding him, but his heart ached, seeing his own youthful doubts in Yuri's fire. Kulka, her braided hair swaying, stepped forward, her bright eyes calm yet urgent, her ochre-dusted hands raised to still the tension. "The land speaks," she said, her voice a melody cutting through the discord. "We honor it with action and faith." She proposed a rain-calling ritual, her words a bridge between Ngura's tradition and Yuri's plea, her heart heavy with fear that the sky might not answer. The tribe agreed, their faces softening, hope a fragile ember. The ritual began at dusk, the clearing swept smooth, a fire blazing at its heart. Kulka led, her face painted with swirling ochre, her movements fluid as she danced, her arms tracing the rain's imagined path. Her chant rose, a haunting plea, joined by the tribe's voices, clapsticks setting a desperate rhythm. Chandri stood at the edge, his spear heavy, his eyes on the sky, empty and merciless. Yuri, his defiance cooled, swayed with the chant, his bright eyes pleading for a sign. Ngura's voice, strong but strained, carried faith, yet her hands trembled, doubt creeping into her soul. The sky remained silent, the air thick with dust, the ritual's power fading like the fire's glow. A sudden crack shattered the night, a deafening roar as an ancient eucalyptus, its roots starved, collapsed, its massive trunk splintering the earth, dust billowing like a storm. The tribe screamed, children clinging to mothers, men raising spears, panic seizing their hearts. Kulka froze, her chant breaking, her bright eyes wide with horror. The trees fall a wound in the land's spirit. Chandri's spear fell, his face ashen, the ancestor's silence deafening. Yuri's breath caught, his hands trembling, the tree's ruin a mirror to his fears. Ngura staggered, her clouded eyes unseeing, her voice a whisper. The land weeps. The dust settled, the fire dim, and the tribe stood frozen, their division raw, the land's collapse a cry they could no longer ignore. The fallen eucalyptus, its splintered trunk a gaping wound in the red earth, cast a shadow over the village, its collapse a deafening echo of the land's despair. The ground, scorched and fractured, burned beneath a sun that glared with merciless fury, its cracks sprawling like veins of grief, each fissure a silent plea from the land's dying heart. The remaining eucalyptus trees, their bark curling like brittle scrolls, sagged under a sky too vast, too silent, their leaves whispering a faint, mournful dirge in a breeze that carried the acrid sting of dust, the sour rot of decay, and a metallic tang as if the earth exhaled its own demise. The tribe of 40 souls moved with a haunted hush, women's hands faltering over dwindling seeds, men's gazes hollow as they gripped worn spears, children's eyes wide with lingering panic. Tiandri's despair, Kalka's quiet resolve, and Yuri's defiant spark wove a fragile thread, binding the village to the land's anguished cry, its pulse now a barely audible whisper. Yuri wandered the village's edge, his lanky frame taut with restless energy, his bright eyes scanning the cracked earth for answers. His heart pounded, the tree's fall and Nongara's rebuke searing his soul, yet his initiation silence had sharpened his senses. He felt the land's pain, its heat scorching his bare feet, its dust coating his throat, its silence louder than any storm. His fingers gripped his boomerang, his shame from defying Nongara, now fuel for redemption. Kneeling near a withered acacia, he froze, his breath catching as he spotted faint tracks, delicate claw-like imprints of honey-eaters, their path weaving toward a distant valley whispered in elder tales. His bright eyes widened, hope surging like a spring, but fear tempered it. Could he trust his find after his reckless trek? His lips trembled, his resolve hardening, a boy striving to prove his worth. He sought Tiandri, finding him by the fallen tree, his lean frame stooped, his spear idle, his dark eyes clouded with the weight of failure. Tiandri's heart ached, the valley's puddle and the tree's ruin a mirror to his fear that the ancestors had abandoned them. Yuri's voice, steady but urgent, cut through his haze. He said, "Honey-eater tracks." He pointed to the earth, his bright eyes blazing. "They lead to a valley, Tiandri. Water's there." Tiandri's gaze sharpened, tracing the tracks, his chest tightening with pride and doubt. Yuri's growth stirred memories of his own youth, but the land's betrayal loomed large. His hand brushed his spear, grounding him, and he nodded, his voice low, "We'll tell the tribe." The tribe gathered, their faces etched with exhaustion, hope fraying like old sinew. Tiandri spoke, his voice raw but firm, presenting Yuri's find as a path forward. Murmurs rose, some eyes brightening, others skeptical. Nongara stood, her white hair stark, her clouded eyes fierce, her gnarled hands clenched. "To leave is to forsake the ancestors," she said, her voice a blade, yet her tremble betrayed doubt, the tree's fall shaking her faith. Kalka, her braided hair swaying, her bright eyes calm yet urgent, stepped forward, her ochre-dusted hands raised. "The ancestors walked through drought," she said, her voice a melody weaving hope. "Yuri's tracks are their sign." Her heart raced, fear of failure clashing with her seer's duty, but her resolve held, a bridge between Nongara's tradition and Tiandri's call to move. Nongara exhaled, her clouded eyes softening, her voice reluctant. "We go, but first we honor the land." The tribe nodded, unity flickering like a rekindled ember. Kalka led a ritual at dusk, the clearing swept smooth, a fire blazing defiantly. Her face painted with swirling ochre, she danced, her movements fluid, her arms tracing the land's heartbeat. Her chant rose, a haunting plea, joined by the tribe's voices, clapsticks setting a fervent rhythm. Tiandri stood at the edge, his spear planted, his dark eyes on Kalka, feeling the land stir, a faint tremor beneath his feet, a whisper of response. Yuri, his defiance humbled, swayed with the chant, his bright eyes glistening, hope anchoring his soul. Nongara's voice, strong but strained, carried faith, her hands steadying, sensing the land's reluctant blessing. As the ritual ended, a soft breeze stirred, free of dust, carrying the faint scent of distant rain. Kalka's heart lifted, her bright eyes meeting Tiandri's, a vow sealed in silence. Yuri's gaze lifted to the stars, their flicker steadier, his tracks a spark of salvation. The tribe dispersed, their steps lighter, but the fallen tree loomed, a reminder of the perilous path ahead. The ritual's faint breeze, carrying the scent of distant rain, still lingered in the tribe's hearts, a fragile thread of hope woven through Kalka's chant and Yeri's tracks. The red earth, scorched and splintered, stretched endlessly before them, its cracks gaping like wounds under a sun that burned with unyielding wrath, each fissure a silent cry from the land's parched soul. The eucalyptus trees, sparse and skeletal, their bark peeling in brittle curls, whispered a faint, mournful lament in a wind that carried the acrid bite of dust, the sour tang of decay, and a metallic edge, as if the earth exhaled its own demise. The tribe of 40 souls began their migration, their steps heavy with hunger and fear, women clutching woven baskets of meager seeds, men gripping worn spears, children clinging to their mothers' hands, their small faces taut with exhaustion. Jandri's resolve, Kalka's vision, and Yeri's burgeoning leadership wove a taut bond, binding the tribe to the land's anguished pulse, its rhythm now a faltering whisper. Jandri led the way, his lean frame steady despite the weight of the tribe's trust pressing his chest. His dark eyes, shadowed by doubt, scanned the barren scrub, the valley's promise a distant hope against the dry stream bed's truth. His heart churned, the fallen eucalyptus a scar in his memory, the ancestors' silence a gnawing fear that his leadership might falter. Yet Yeri's tracks, clear and true, anchored him, a spark of faith in the boy's growth. His spear, worn smooth by years, felt heavy, his steps deliberate as he traced the honey-eater path through withered acacias, their faded blooms a mockery of life. Yeri walked beside him, his lanky frame taut with purpose, his bright eyes darting over the cracked earth seeking signs. His heart raced, pride from his discovery tempered by guilt over his defiance, his initiation's lessons urging him to prove his worth. He adjusted his boomerang, his fingers steady, his gaze meeting Jandri's with a silent vow to lead rightly. The journey grew brutal, the land a relentless adversary, ground scorching bare feet, air thick with dust that stung eyes and throats, hunger gnawing at bellies. Women sang softly, their voices cracked but defiant, weaving ancestral tales to soothe children. Men scanned for threats, their spears ready, their faces etched with strain. Nura, with her white hair stark, walked slowly, her clouded eyes distant, her faith shaken by the land's betrayal, yet clinging to tradition. Her gnarled hands gripped a woven staff, her steps faltering, doubt a shadow in her heart. Kalka moved among them, her braided hair swaying, her bright eyes calm yet vigilant, her ochre-dusted hands offering comfort. Her heart ached, the ritual's breeze a fleeting sign, her seer's duty a weight she bore with quiet fear. Could she guide them through this desolation? A sudden roar shattered the silence, a sandstorm surging from the horizon, its red dust a blinding wall, its howl drowning cries. The tribe scattered, their unity fraying as wind tore at their skin, dust choking their lungs. Jandri shouted, his voice lost, his spear slashing the air to rally them. Yeri grabbed a child's hand, his bright eyes wide with panic, his heart pounding as he shielded them against a rock. Kalka's breath caught, her senses reeling, but her dreamtime wisdom stirred, a memory of storms navigated by star and stone. She noticed a lone acacia, its roots anchoring a gully, a haven. Her voice, sharp and clear, cut through the chaos. To the gully! She led, her movements swift, her bright eyes piercing the dust. In the storm's wake, a mother's wail pierced the air. Her daughter, Lyri, was missing. Kalka's heart seized, her hands trembling, but her gaze sharpened, tracing the earth for signs. She spotted a faint footprint, a broken twig, Leary's path leading to a crevice. Kalka crawled through, her braided hair snagging, her hands scraping rock, finding Leary curled, shivering, but alive. She cradled the girl, her bright eyes glistening, relief flooding her soul. The tribe reunited, their faces dust-streaked, hope rekindled. Jandri's dark eyes met Kalka's, pride and gratitude unspoken, his spear lighter. Yiri, his resolve hardened, stood taller, his bright eyes fixed on the valley ahead. The storm a trial survived, the land's challenge, now their shared burden. The sandstorm's red dust still clung to the tribe's skin. Leary's rescue, a fragile ember of hope kindled by Kalka's wisdom. The red earth, scarred and splintered, stretched beneath a sun that burned with unrelenting fury, its cracks gaping like wounds, each fissure a testament to the land's desperate thirst. The sparse eucalyptus trees, their bark peeling in brittle curls, swayed faintly, their leaves whispering a soft, weary lament in a breeze that carried the acrid sting of dust, the sour tang of decay, and a faint, metallic edge, as if the earth exhaled its own despair. The tribe of 40 souls pressed on, their steps heavy with exhaustion, women clutching woven baskets of dwindling seeds, men gripping worn spears, children's small hands clasped tightly, their dust-streaked faces taut with hunger. Tiangri's steady resolve, Kalka's guiding vision, and Leary's emerging leadership wove a taut thread, binding the tribe to the land's faltering pulse, its rhythm a barely audible hope. Tiandri led them into the valley, his lean frame taut, his dark eyes scanning the horizon where Leary's honey-eater tracks promised salvation. His heart churned, the sandstorm's chaos and the fallen eucalyptus haunting him, a fear that the ancestors' guidance might fail. Yet Kalka's courage and Leary's growth anchored him, his spear, worn smooth by years, a lifeline. His steps quickened as the valley unfolded, a barren expanse of cracked earth, but at its heart a thin river glinted, its waters murky, sluggish, fringed with wilted reeds. His breath caught, hope surging, but tempered by doubt. Could this sustain them? Leary, beside him, his lanky frame vibrating with anticipation, let out a quiet gasp, his bright eyes wide, glistening with relief. His heart soared, the track's truth a redemption for his defiance, yet guilt lingered, his initiation's lessons urging caution. He gripped his boomerang, his fingers steady, his gaze meeting Tiandri's with a silent vow to serve. Kalka knelt by the river, her braided hair swaying, her bright eyes narrowing, as she dipped her fingers into the cloudy water, tasting its bitter silt. Her chest tightened, the river's weakness a mirror to the land's pain, dry streams, absent birds, fallen trees. Her dreamtime wisdom stirred, memories of ancestors filtering water through sand and bark. Her heart raced, her seer's duty a weight she bore with quiet fear. Failure meant death. "We can clean it," she said, her voice firm, her ochre-dusted hands gathering reeds and stones. She showed the women, her movements precise, layering materials to trap silt, her bright eyes urging trust. The tribe watched, their faces softening as clear water trickled through, a miracle born of knowledge. Children laughed, their voices a fragile melody, women's hands steadying, men's shoulders easing. Yuri, watching Kalka, felt a spark ignite. His bright eyes scanned the valley, noting sparse acacias offering shade. "We need shelters," he said, his voice steady, raw with purpose, facing Tiandri. His heart pounded, fear of rejection clashing with his drive to lead, his initiation's silence teaching him to act for others. Tiandri's dark eyes met his, pride flashing, his jaw softening. "Good," he said, his voice low, warm,
and his hand on Yuri's was a rare gesture of trust. The men followed Yuri, their spears set aside, weaving branches into lean-tos, their movements unified, hope a shared pulse. Nura, her white hair stark, stood apart, her clouded eyes tracing Yuri's work. Her gnarled hands gripped her staff, her heart torn. The migration defied her faith, yet the river and Yuri's maturity stirred her. The fallen eucalyptus had shaken her, the ancestors' silence a wound, but Yuri's growth echoed their resilience. She approached him, her voice low, steady. "You see the land's need," she said, her clouded eyes softening, a rare acknowledgement. Yuri's breath caught, his bright eyes glistening, pride swelling, his defiance forgiven. Kalka watched, her heart lifting, her bright eyes meeting Tiandri's, a vow of unity sealed. As dusk settled, a lone honey-eater darted across the sky, its wings a soft hum, its path a promise of rain. The tribe paused, their faces upturned, hope blooming like a fragile flower. Tiandri's spear felt lighter, his dark eyes steady, the river's murmur a song of survival. Yuri's gaze followed the bird, his resolve a flame, the valley a new beginning. The land's challenge now their shared hope.
The honey-eater's fleeting wings, a promise etched against the valley's dusk, still stirred the tribe's weary hearts, its flight a spark of hope kindled by the river's murmur. The red earth, scarred and splintered, lay softer now, its cracks softened by the river's touch. Though the sun still glared with a fading ferocity, its heat a lingering echo of the land's long thirst. The eucalyptus trees, their bark curling in brittle scrolls, stood taller, their leaves whispering a tentative song in a breeze that carried the faint, clean scent of damp earth, mingling with the acrid dust and a subtle grassy sweetness, as if the land exhaled a cautious revival. The tribe of 40 souls moved with renewed purpose, women weaving stronger baskets, men sharpening spears with steadier hands, children's laughter rippling like the river's flow, their dust-streaked faces bright with wonder. Chandri's quiet pride, Kalka's guiding vision, and Yuri's burgeoning responsibility wove a resilient bond, binding the tribe to the land's reawakening pulse, its rhythm a hopeful cadence. Kalka stood by the riverbank, her braided hair swaying, her bright eyes tracing the water's sluggish dance, its ripples catching the star's faint gleam. Her heart swelled, the river's survival a miracle born of her wisdom, yet her chest tightened, the sandstorm's terror and the fallen eucalyptus lingering in her soul. Her dreamtime role weighed heavy, a fear that the land's reprieve might be fleeting, but her ochre-dusted hands, steady as she clutched a woven reed, vowed to weave their journey into eternity. Chandri, nearby, his lean frame relaxed, his spear resting against a tree, watched the valley, his dark eyes soft with relief. The river's promise eased his leadership's burden, yet the ancestors' silence, broken only by Yuri's tracks, stirred a quiet doubt. Could he protect this fragile hope? His fingers brushed his spear's worn shaft, grounding him, his gaze meeting Kalka's with unspoken gratitude. A soft rumble stirred the air, clouds gathering like ancestral spirits, their edges silvered by starlight. Rain fell, gentle at first, then steady, its patter a melody on the red earth, filling cracks, reviving wilted reeds. The tribe gasped, their faces upturned, hands outstretched, women's voices rising in a spontaneous chant, men's shoulders easing, their spears forgotten.
Ngura, her white hair glistening, stood still, her clouded eyes unseeing but serene, the rain washing her doubts, her gnarled hands open, feeling the land's forgiveness. Yuri, his lanky frame drenched, his bright eyes glistening, his heart soaring, his tracks had led them here, his defiance redeemed. Kalka called a gratitude ritual, the tribe gathering around a blazing fire, its flames defiant against the rain-soft curtain. Her face painted with swirling ochre, she danced, her movements fluid, her arms tracing the journey's arc, sandstorm, river, hope. Her voice wove a new dreamtime story. The honey-eater spirit, born of dust and fire, led the people through shadow to water's embrace, teaching that courage binds us to the land's heart. Her words, rich and resonant, painted their trials, Leary's rescue, Yuri's tracks, Chandri's lead, etching them into tradition. The tribe listened, their faces aglow, children's eyes wide, elders nodding, unity a shared breath. Chandri's dark eyes glistened, pride for his people swelling, his doubts quieted by Kalka's tale. Yuri swayed with the chant, his heart full, his initiation's lessons now a legacy. After the ritual, Chandri and Yuri stood by the river, the rain a soft veil. "We'll protect this land," Chandri said, his voice low, firm, his hand on Yuri's shoulder. Yuri nodded, his bright eyes steady, his resolve a vow. "For the ancestors," he said, his voice raw, a man emerging. Ngura approached, her white hair damp, her clouded eyes warm. She pressed a small wooden totem, a carved honey-eater, into Yuri's hand, its weight a symbol of responsibility. "Carry it well," she said, her voice soft, a blessing. Yuri's breath caught, pride and duty flooding him, his fingers tracing the totem's grain. As the tribe settled, the rain's rhythm steadied, the valley greening, a lone honey-eater's call echoing, a sign of peace. Kalka's bright eyes lifted to the stars, her heart at rest, the land's promise sealed in their story, the future, a path yet unwritten. The rain's gentle song and Kalka's dreamtime tale still echoed in the tribe's hearts, the valley's greening a fragile tapestry of hope, woven by Yiri's totem and Ungra's blessing. The red earth, softened by the deluge, bore new sprouts, yet its cracks lingered, faint scars beneath a sun that burned with a subtler but persistent heat, its rays a reminder of the land's long thirst. The eucalyptus trees, their bark glistening with dew, swayed gently, their leaves whispering a cautious melody in a breeze that carried the clean scent of wet earth, tinged with a faint acrid dust and a metallic undertone, as if the land exhaled a wary revival. The tribe of 40 souls moved with tentative joy, women weaving baskets with renewed vigor, men sharpening spears with lighter hands, children splashing in the river's shallows, their laughter a delicate thread. Chandri's quiet pride, Kalka's vigilant wisdom, and Yiri's anchored resolve wove a resilient bond, binding the tribe to the land's reawakening pulse. Yet a shadow of doubt stirred beneath its rhythm. Chandri stood by the riverbank, his lean frame tense, his dark eyes tracing the water's sluggish flow, its surface dulled by a thin film of silt. His heart, lifted by the rain, now tightened, the river's level lower than the day before, its banks exposing cracked mud where reeds once thrived. The sandstorm's chaos, the fallen eucalyptus and the valley's meager puddle haunted him.
a fear that the ancestors' reprieve was fleeting. His fingers gripped his spear, its worn shaft grounding him, but his jaw clenched, the weight of leadership pressing harder. Could he shield his people from a land that seemed to falter again? He noticed a subtle dip in the earth near the river, a soft subsidence where the ground sagged, as if the land's bones weakened. His breath caught, his dark eyes narrowing, a silent vow to protect stirring within. Kalka, her braided hair swaying, joined him, her bright eyes scanning the river with a seer's intensity, her ochre-dusted hands clutching a woven reed. Her heart sank, the river's decline a wound in the land's spirit, echoing the dry stream bed, the absent honey-eaters, the wattle's early bloom. Her dreamtime wisdom stirred unease, a vision of lands collapsing under thirst, yet her role as guide demanded hope. The rain wasn't enough, she said, her voice low, steady, but laced with fear. Her bright eyes met Chandri's, a plea for action veiled in calm. Chandri nodded, his face grim, his fingers twitching. Kalka's warning deepened his dread. "The ground's shifting," he said, pointing to the subsidence, his voice raw, the land's fragility a mirror to his own. Yidi, nearby, his lanky frame taut with restless energy, overheard, his bright eyes darting to the river's shrinking flow. His heart raced, the totem's weight in his hand a call to act, his initiation's lessons urging him to lead. The river's promise had redeemed his defiance, but its decline reignited his drive to prove himself. "We should go upstream," he said, his voice bold, his hands gesturing toward the valley's rise, where the river's source might hide. "There's more water, I know it." His bright eyes blazed, hope clashing with impatience, a boy turned man eager to solve the crisis. Chandri's gaze softened, pride flickering, but his brow creased, Yidi's boldness echoing his reckless trek. Kalka's face tightened, her bright eyes flashing caution. "Upstream is unknown," she said, her voice firm, her hands slicing the air. Her heart pounded, fear of losing Yidi clashing with her trust in his growth, her seer's duty to protect, warring with the need to explore. Yidi's shoulders sagged, his bright eyes dimming, but he nodded, his totem's weight steadying him, a sign of maturity. Chandri stood silent, his spear heavy, his dark eyes shifting between Kalka's wisdom and Yidi's fire, torn between safety and necessity. The tribe's voices rose nearby, women's chants faltering as they noticed the river's decline, men's hands slowing, children's laughter fading. A faint tremor rippled through the earth, barely perceptible, but Kalka's bright eyes widened, her hands clutching her reed tighter, the land's warning a pulse in her veins. Chandri's jaw tightened, his gaze fixed on the subsidence, the river's murmur a fragile thread. Yidi's bright eyes lifted to the horizon, his resolve unshaken, the upstream's mystery a challenge he vowed to face, the land's shadow a burden shared by all. The river's faltering murmur and Kalka's cautious warning still weighed on the tribe's fragile hope, the valley's greening a fleeting veil over the land's persistent thirst. The red earth, softened by rain but scarred by cracks, lay tense beneath a sun that burned with a subtler but unrelenting heat, its rays glinting off sparse sprouts, a reminder of the drought's lingering shadow. The eucalyptus trees, their bark glistening faintly, leaned wearily, their leaves whispering a tentative sigh in a breeze that carried the clean scent of damp soil, laced with a faint acrid dust and a metallic tang, as if the earth exhaled a guarded revival. The tribe of 40 souls moved with quiet unease, women rationing filtered water, men sharpening spears with furrowed brows, children's laughter muted as they sensed the river's decline. Chandri's vigilant resolve, Kalka's guarded wisdom and Yiri's restrained boldness wove a taut bond, binding the tribe to the land's uncertain pulse, its rhythm a hesitant beat. Chandri, his lean frame taut, stood by the river, his dark eyes tracing the subsidence's sagging earth, its dip a wound in his trust. His heart churned, the river's drop and Kalka's fear of unknown lands clashing with Yiri's upstream plea, a call he could no longer dismiss. His spear, worn smooth by years, felt heavy, the ancestor's silence a gnawing doubt. Could he lead through this peril? Yet Yiri's totem, a symbol of growth, urged him to trust the boy. His jaw clenched, his voice low, he gathered Yiri, Miri, and Binda, their nods silent, their faces set with faith. "We go upstream," he said, his dark eyes meeting Yiri's, a vow to protect sealed in their shared resolve. Yiri, his lanky frame vibrating with purpose, gripped his boomerang, his bright eyes blazing with hope, tempered by Kalka's caution. His heart raced, the totem's weight a reminder of duty, his initiation's lessons anchoring his impatience. The river's decline had stoked his drive to act, but Ngara's trust and Chandri's faith steadied him, a boy striving to be a man. The group set out, their steps light but wary, the valley's rise steepening into jagged cliffs, their red stone baking under the sun. The air grew thick, the scent of dust mingling with a faint musky odor of unseen beasts, the ground littered with sharp pebbles that bruised bare feet. Chandri led, his senses sharp, his spear raised, scanning for threats, dingoes, snakes, or worse. The path narrowed, a cliff's edge looming, its drop a shadowed abyss. Yiri, ahead, his bright eyes fixed on faint bird tracks, misstepped, a loose rock crumbling beneath him. His breath caught, his arms flaming, the boomerang slipping as he slid toward the void. Chandri lunged, his spear clattering, his hand grasping Yiri's wrist, his dark eyes wide with fear. "Hold on," he growled, his muscles straining, his heart pounding as he pulled Yiri back, their breaths ragged, dust swirling. Yiri's bright eyes glistened, shame and gratitude warring within, his totem pressed against his chest, a lifeline. Chandri's grip lingered, his face stern but soft, pride flickering, their bond a silent vow. Beyond the cliff, the river widened into a large lake, its waters clear but fringed with dry reeds, a treasure under the sun's glare. Chandri knelt, tasting its sweetness, hope surging, but his dark eyes narrowed, spotting faint footprints, human, unfamiliar, etched in the mud. His chest tightened, the ancestors' tales of tribal clashes stirring fear of conflict. Yiri's bright eyes followed his gaze, his heart sinking, his boldness checked by the unknown. Miri and Binda exchanged glances, their hands tightening on their weapons. Trust in Chandri unwavering but heavy. Kalka's warning echoed, the lake's promise shadowed by peril, the land's challenge now a test of peace. The lake's clear waters, a fragile promise shadowed by unfamiliar footprints, still stirred unease in the tribe's hearts, the valley's hope tempered by the specter of conflict. The red earth, softened by rain but scarred by cracks, lay tense beneath a sun that burned with a steady, watchful heat, its rays glinting off sparse sprouts, a faint echo of the drought's long grip. The eucalyptus trees, their bark glistening with dew, swayed gently, their leaves whispering a cautious murmur in a breeze that carried the clean scent of wet soil, laced with a faint acrid dust and a musky tang, as if the land exhaled a wary truce. The tribe of 40 souls lingered near the lake, their movements guarded, women rationing filtered water, men gripping spears with taut hands, children's voices hushed as they sensed the adults' tension.
Chiandri's vigilant resolve, Kalka's steady wisdom, and Yiri's tempered boldness wove a fragile bond, binding the tribe to the land's uncertain pulse, its rhythm a hesitant breath. Chiandri stood by the lake, his lean frame rigid, his dark eyes scanning the horizon where the footprints vanished into scrub. His heart churned, the lake's sweetness a lifeline, but the ancestors' tales of tribal wars, spears clashing, blood-staining earth, gnawed at him. His spear, worn smooth by years, felt heavy, his leadership tested by this new threat. Could he protect his people without breaking the land's fragile peace? His jaw clenched, his gaze steady, he signaled Miri and Binda to stay alert, their nods silent, their faces grim. Yiri, nearby, his lanky frame tense, gripped his boomerang, his bright eyes darting between Chiandri and the scrub, the totem's weight urging calm. His heart raced, the lake's promise his redemption, but Kalka's warning of unknown land stirred fear. Could his boldness spark ruin? A rustle broke the silence, figures emerging from the acacias. 10 strangers, their spears raised, their faces painted with ochre swirls, their leader a tall man with piercing eyes. Chiandri stepped forward, his spear lowered, his dark eyes steady but firm. "We seek water, not war," he said, his dark eyes locking with the leaders, offering to share the lake. The stranger's face hardened, his voice sharp, claiming the lake as their ancestors' gift. Murmurs rose, spears tightening, the air thick with tension, the musky scent of sweat mingling with dust. Chiandri's chest tightened, his hand steady, but his heart wavered, peace a fragile thread against ancient rivalries. Kalka, her braided hair swaying, stepped beside Chiandri, her bright eyes calm yet piercing, her ochre-dusted hands raised to still the discord. Her heart pounded, the lake's promise a chance for unity, but her dreamtime wisdom recalled feuds that scarred the land. Her role as seer demanded peace, yet fear of failure gripped her. "Let us share a story," she said, her voice a melody cutting through the standoff, gesturing to a fire kindled nearby. The strangers hesitated, their leader's eyes narrowing, but her calm disarmed them, their spears lowering. The tribe sat, faces wary, the fire's glow casting shadows on their painted skin. Kalka began a dreamtime tale, her voice rich, weaving a vision of the emu spirit uniting tribes under a shared spring, their spears joined to hunt, not fight. Her words painted peace, shared waters, children's laughter, elders' wisdom, stirring nods, softening gazes. Chiandri's dark eyes glistened, pride for Kalka swelling, his doubts eased. Yiri, his bright eyes wide, felt the power of the story, his totem a call to connect. He noticed a young stranger, lanky like him, his eyes curious, clutching a carved stick. Yiri offered a smile, his hand extended, sharing a seed pod. The boy, named Waru, grinned, his voice soft, sharing a tale of his own hunt. Their laughter, tentative but true, broke the silence, a bridge between tribes. The leader nodded, his face softening, agreeing to share the lake, his voice grudging but sincere. Chiandri exhaled, his spear lighter, his dark eyes meeting Kalka's, gratitude unspoken. Yiri's bright eyes met Waru's, a bond forged, the lake's waters a shared hope. As the tribes parted, a faint breeze stirred, free of dust, the land's murmur a cautious blessing, but the sun's heat lingered, a reminder of trials ahead. The poisoned fish, their lifeless bodies bobbing in the lake's once clear waters, cast a shadow over the tribe's fragile alliance, the valley's hope tainted by the land's silent cry.
The red earth, softened by rain but etched with stubborn cracks, lay tense beneath a sun that burned with a steady, unyielding heat, its rays glinting off sparse sprouts, a faint reminder of the drought's enduring grip. The eucalyptus trees, their bark shimmering faintly, swayed wearily, their leaves whispering a soft, uneasy lament in a breeze that carried the clean scent of damp soil, laced with a sour tang of decay and a bitter metallic edge, as if the earth exhaled its own sickness. The combined tribes, 40 souls and 10 strangers, moved with guarded resolve, women sharing filtered water, men clutching spears with tense hands, children's games subdued as they sensed the adults' worry. Chandri's cautious vigilance, Kalka's foreboding wisdom, and Yiri's steadfast resolve wove a tentative bond, binding the tribes to the land's ailing pulse, its rhythm a faltering breath. Chandri stood by the lake, his lean frame rigid, his dark eyes tracing the water's oily sheen, its surface marred by the poison's trace. His heart churned, the lake's betrayal and Kura's wary trust pressing against his leadership. The ancestors' tales of tainted lands, springs dying, tribes scattering, gnawed at him, a fear that this poison could unravel their unity. His spear, worn smooth by years, felt heavy, his jaw clenched, his resolve to protect his people clashing with the land's mystery. Kelka, her braided hair swaying, joined him, her bright eyes clouded with dread, her ochre-dusted hands clutching a woven reed. Her dreamtime vision stirred unease, images of choked rivers, barren roots, her seer's duty, a weight she bore with quiet terror. The poison's source lies upstream, she said, her voice low, raw, her bright eyes urging action. Chandri nodded, his dark eyes meeting hers, a shared vow to heal the land. Yiri and Waru, their bond a spark of hope, volunteered to lead the search, their lanky frames moving with purpose. Yiri's bright eyes blazed, his totem's weight a call to lead, his heart racing with pride tempered by fear. Could his actions save or doom them? Waru, his grin steady, matched Yiri's pace, their shared laughter from the hunt now a quiet resolve. Chandri, Kura, Miri, and Binda followed, their steps cautious, the path steepening into a rocky gorge, its cliffs baking under the sun. The air grew thick, the musky scent of earth mingling with a sharp, bitter odor, the ground soft but littered with jagged stones. Yuri's senses sharpened, his bright eyes catching a faint trail of discolored soil, leading to a stagnant pool fed by a trickling stream, its banks choked by a landslide's rubble, the mud reeking of poison. Yiri and Waru rallied the group, their voices steady, their hands guiding spears to pry stones free, their sweat mingling with dust. Yiri's heart pounded, his totem a lifeline, his leadership earning Chandri's proud nod and Kura's grudging respect. The rebel shifted, the stream flowing clearer, but the pool's stench lingered, a wound not fully healed. Kalka, summoned to the site, led a cleansing ritual, her face painted with swirling ochre, her movements fluid as she danced, her chant a haunting plea to the land's spirits. The tribes joined, their voices rising, clapsticks setting a fervent rhythm, the air softening with a faint grassy scent. Kalka's bright eyes glistened, relief clashing with fear, her heart sensing the land's reluctant response. Chandri, his dark eyes distant, watched the ritual, his spear heavy, the landslide scars stirring dread. Could the earth shift again? His chest tightened, the poison source cleared but its threat unresolved, the valley's stability a fragile hope. Yiri and Waru, their hands blistered, stood side by side, their bright eyes meeting, their bond a bridge between tribes. The tribes dispersed, their faces lighter, but the bitter tang lingered, the land's warning a pulse in their shared resolve. The cleansing ritual's faint, grassy scent still lingered in the tribe's hearts. The cleared landslide, a fragile victory over the lake's poisoned waters. Yet the valley's peace trembled under the land's restless pulse. The red earth, softened by rain but scarred with stubborn cracks, lay taut beneath a sun that burned with a steady, oppressive heat, its rays glinting off sparse sprouts, a quiet testament to the drought's enduring shadow. The eucalyptus trees, their bark glistening faintly, swayed uneasily, their leaves whispering a tense, faltering sigh in a breeze that carried the clean scent of damp soil, laced with a bitter metallic tang and a faint, sour decay, as if the earth exhaled its own unease. The combined tribes, 40 souls and 10 strangers, moved with cautious unity, women mending baskets, men sharpening spears with furrowed brows, children's games hushed as they sensed the adults' tension. Dondri's steadfast vigilance, Kulka's foreboding wisdom, and Yiri's growing leadership wove a tentative bond, binding the tribes to the land's ailing rhythm, its beat a wavering hope. Dondri stood by the lake, his lean frame tense, his dark eyes tracing the water's cleared surface, its ripples dulled by a thin film of silt. His heart, steadied by the tribe's alliance, churned with dread, the landslide scars and poisoned fish a warning of deeper peril. His spear, worn smooth by years, felt heavy, his leadership tested by the land's instability. Could he guide both tribes through this unseen threat? His jaw clenched, his gaze shifting to the sagging ground near the river, its subsidence a wound in his trust. Kulka, her braided hair swaying, joined him, her bright eyes clouded with unease, her ochre-dusted hands clutching a woven reed. Her dreamtime visions stirred fear, images of cracking earth, spirits restless, her seer's duty a burden she bore with quiet resolve. "The land's angry," she said, her voice low, raw, her bright eyes urging vigilance. A sudden tremor shook the valley, a deep rumble rising from the earth, its roar swallowing cries as shelters swayed, their woven branches snapping. Dust billowed, the ground lurching, children screaming, women clutching baskets, men raising spears in futile defense. Dondri staggered, his spear planted, his dark eyes wide with fear, the ancestor's silence deafening. Kura, his tall frame steady, rallied his people, his piercing eyes meeting Dondri's, a shared resolve forged in panic. Yuri, his lanky frame braced, shielded a child, his bright eyes blazing, his totem's weight a call to act. His heart raced, the tremor a mirror to his fear of failure, yet his initiation's lessons steadied him. Waru, beside him, his grin gone, nodded, their bond a spark of courage. Dondri and Kura gathered the tribes, their voices firm, proposing relocation to higher ground, away from the river's unstable banks. Murmurs rose, faces etched with worry, but nods followed, trust in their leaders a fragile anchor. Yuri and Waru volunteered to scout, their steps swift, their bright eyes scanning the rocky rise for safety. They found a cave, its mouth wide, its walls cool and dry, a haven etched with faint ochre markings, ancestral signs of refuge. Yuri's heart swelled, pride clashing with doubt. Could this shelter hold them all? Waru's hand clapped his shoulder, their laughter faint but true, their bond a bridge between tribes. Kulka, summoned to the cave, traced the ochre markings, her bright eyes narrowing, her heart sensing a spiritual imbalance, spirits stirred by the land's wounds, demanding respect. "We must tread lightly," she said, her voice steady, her hands trembling, fear of angering the land warring with her duty. Dondri's dark eyes met hers, his jaw tight, the tremor scars a weight on his soul. Yuri's bright eyes lifted to the cave ceiling,
his totem a vow to lead wisely, the land's rage a shared burden. As the tribes prepared to move, a faint aftershock rippled, the valley's dust settling, the sun's heat a relentless reminder of trials ahead. The cave's cool walls, etched with ancestral ochre, offered refuge from the valley's tremor, yet the tribe's fragile unity trembled under the land's restless pulse. The red earth outside, softened by rain but scarred with stubborn cracks, lay tense beneath a sun that burned with a steady, relentless heat, its rays glinting off sparse sprouts, a faint echo of the drought's unyielding grip. The eucalyptus trees, their bark shimmering faintly, swayed uneasily, their leaves whispering a tense, faltering murmur in a breeze that carried the clean scent of damp soil, laced with a bitter, metallic tang and a faint, musky decay, as if the earth exhaled its own disquiet. The combined tribes, 40 souls and 10 strangers, settled in the cave, their movements cautious, women rationing dwindling seeds, men sharpening spears with furrowed brows, children's voices hushed as they clung to their mothers. Chanjari's steadfast vigilance, Kalka's spiritual resolve, and Yiri's growing leadership wove a tentative bond, binding the tribes to the land's ailing rhythm, its beat a wavering thread. Chanjari stood at the cave's mouth, his lean frame taut, his dark eyes scanning the valley below, where the lake's waters glimmered faintly, its banks marred by subsidence. His heart, steadied by the cave's safety, churned with unease, the poisoned fish and earth tremor, a warning of deeper peril. His spear, worn smooth by years, felt heavy, his leadership strained by the tribe's growing hunger. Baskets nearly empty, game scarce, the land's bounty fading. His jaw clenched, his gaze distant, fear of failure clashing with his duty to protect. Kalka, her braided hair swaying, joined him, her bright eyes shadowed with concern, her ochre-dusted hands clutching a woven reed. Her dreamtime vision stirred dread, images of barren hunts, lurking shadows, her seer's duty a burden she bore with quiet fear. "The land withholds," she said, her voice low, raw, her bright eyes urging action. Chanjari nodded, his dark eyes meeting hers, a shared vow to endure. Yiri and Woru, their bond a spark of hope, volunteered to hunt, their lanky frames moving with purpose. Yiri's bright eyes blazed, his totem's weight a call to provide, his heart racing with pride tempered by the cave's hunger. Woru, his grin steady, matched Yiri's pace, their shared resolve from clearing the landslide, now a quiet determination. They ventured toward the lake, their steps cautious, the scrub dense with withered acacias, the air thick with a musky scent and a faint, briny tang. Yiri's senses sharpened, his boomerang ready, his bright eyes catching faint tracks, kangaroo prints, then something larger, deeper, a drag mark etched in the mud. His breath caught, his gaze meeting Woru's, fear flickering. "Crocodile," Woru whispered, his voice tight, pointing to a massive print near the lake's edge, its claws gouged deep. Yiri's heart pounded, his totem a lifeline, the predator's threat a weight on his soul. They returned, faces grim, the crocodile's signs a wound in their hope. Chanjari and Kura listened, their piercing eyes narrowing, their hands tightening on spears. Kalka, summoned, led a ritual in the cave, her face painted with swirling ochre, her movements fluid as she danced, her chant a haunting plea for guidance. The tribes joined, their voices rising, clapsticks setting a fervent rhythm, the air softening with a faint earthy scent. Kalka's bright eyes widened, her heart sensing a new threat. Shadows moving beyond the lake, spirits restless. "Danger lurks," she said, her voice steady, her hands trembling, fear of the unknown warring with her duty. Chanjari and Kura planned defenses, their voices low, proposing traps and night watches, their trust a fragile anchor. Yuri's bright eyes met Woru's, their bond strengthened, the hunt's failure a shared burden. Chanjari's dark eyes lingered on them, pride clashing with dread, the crocodile's threat a test of their unity. As the tribe settled, the cave's walls echoed with their chants, the sun's heat outside a relentless reminder of trials ahead. The cave's ancestral ochre markings, glowing faintly under the tribe's ritual chants, held their fragile hope against the land's restless pulse, the crocodile's tracks a shadow over their dwindling resources. The red earth outside, softened by rain but etched with stubborn cracks, lay tense beneath a sun that burned with a steady, oppressive heat, its rays glinting off sparse sprouts, a quiet testament to the drought's lingering grip. The eucalyptus trees, their bark shimmering with dew, swayed uneasily, their leaves whispering a tense, faltering murmur in a breeze that carried the clean scent of damp soil, laced with a briny tang and a faint musky decay, as if the earth exhaled its own disquiet. The combined tribes, 40 souls and 10 strangers, clung to the cave's safety, women rationing seeds with trembling hands, men crafting traps with furrowed brows, children's voices hushed as they sensed the predator's threat. Chandri's resolute vigilance, Kalka's spiritual caution, and Yiri's steadfast courage wove a tentative bond, binding the tribes to the land's ailing rhythm, its beat a wavering thread. Chandri led a water-gathering group to the lake, his lean frame taut, his dark eyes scanning the reeds where the crocodile's tracks had loomed. His heart churned, the poisoned fish, earth tremor, and now this predator pressing against his leadership. His spear, worn smooth by years, felt heavy, his resolve to protect both tribes clashing with fear of failure. Kura, his tall frame alert, walked beside him, his piercing eyes mirroring Chandri's vigilance, their alliance a fragile anchor. Yiri and Waru, their bond a spark of hope, carried woven baskets, their bright eyes darting to the water's edge, their totems a call to act. Yiri's heart raced, his courage tempered by Kalka's warning of imbalance, his initiation's lessons urging him to face the danger. A sudden splash shattered the silence, a massive crocodile lunging from the reeds, its jaws snapping, its eyes glinting with hunger. A tribesman, Benda, cried out, his leg gashed, blood staining the mud. Chandri shouted, his spear raised, his dark eyes wide with fear, lunging to shield Benda. Kura's spear joined his, their movements a desperate dance, but the beast thrashed, its tail whipping, the air thick with briny spray and musky terror. Yiri and Waru, their hearts pounding, acted as one, hurling stones to distract the crocodile, their bright eyes blazing, their voices sharp with defiance. Yiri's totem pressed against his chest, his fear swallowed by duty, Waru's grin fierce beside him. Their barrage drew the beast's gaze, giving the Chandri and Kura the moment to strike, their spears piercing its hide, the crocodile's roar fading as it slumped, its blood mingling with the lake's waters. Kalka, summoned to the shore, knelt by Binda, her braided hair swaying, her bright eyes calm but urgent, her ochre-dusted hands applying herbs to his wound. Her heart ached, the attack a wound in the land's spirit, her dreamtime visions warning of lingering imbalance, restless spirits, tainted waters. Her voice, soft but firm, guided the tribes to carry Binda to the cave, her healing ritual a chant that soothed their panic, the air softening with a faint herbal scent. Chandri's dark eyes met hers, gratitude unspoken, his spear lighter, pride for Yiri swelling. Kura's piercing eyes softened, his hand clapping Waru's shoulder, their alliance strengthened by shared blood. The tribes shared the crocodile's meat, their firelit feast a bound forged in survival, women's chants rising, men's laughter mingling, children's eyes wide with awe. Yuri and Waru sat close, their bright eyes glistening, their bravery a bridge between tribes. Kalka, her face painted with ochre, spoke softly, her voice raw, warning of the land's unrest, tremors, poison, predators, a sign of deeper wounds. Chandri's jaw clenched, his dark eyes distant, fear of future threats stirring. As the feast ended, a faint breeze stirred, free of brine, but the lake's waters lapped uneasily, the land's warning a pulse in their shared resolve.
The crocodile's defeat, its meat shared in a fire-lit feast, still warmed the tribe's hearts, a testament to their unity against the land's trials. The red earth, softened by rain and scarred with fading cracks, lay calmer beneath a sun that burned with a gentler, forgiving heat, its rays nurturing tender sprouts, a quiet promise of the drought's retreat. The eucalyptus trees, their bark glistening with dew, stood taller, their leaves whispering a hopeful melody in a breeze that carried the clean scent of damp soil, mingled with a faint grassy sweetness and a subtle earthy warmth, as if the earth exhaled its slow healing. The combined tribes, 40 souls and 10 strangers, moved with renewed purpose in the cave's embrace, women weaving baskets with steady hands, men crafting spears with lighter hearts, children's laughter echoing like the lake's ripples. Tiandri's resolute pride, Kulka's spiritual serenity, and Yiri's anchored courage wove a lasting bond, binding the tribes to the land's reviving pulse, its rhythm a steady song. Kulka stood at the cave's mouth, her braided hair swaying, her bright eyes tracing the valley's greening slopes, where the lake's waters shimmered, clear, free of poison. Her heart swelled, the tribe's survival, through tremor, poison, and predator, a miracle born of her wisdom, yet her chest tightened, the land's lingering imbalance a faint shadow in her dreamtime visions. Her ochre-dusted hands clutched a woven reed, her seer's duty now to weave their trials into eternity. She called a final ritual, her voice soft but commanding, her bright eyes urging unity. Tiandri, his lean frame relaxed, joined her, his dark eyes warm with gratitude, his spear resting against the cave wall. His heart, once burdened by doubt, now soared, the ancestors' guidance clear in the tribe's alliance. Kura, his tall frame steady, stood beside him, his piercing eyes softened, their shared leadership a vow sealed in blood and trust. The tribes gathered around a blazing fire, its flames dancing under a starlit sky, the air alive with the scent of burning eucalyptus and a faint herbal tang. Kalka, her face painted with swirling ochre, danced, her movements fluid, her arms tracing the journey's arc, sandstorm, poisoned waters, crocodile's jaws. Her voice wove a new dreamtime story. The emu and honey-eater spirits, bound by courage, led two tribes through fire and shadow, their spears united, their hearts one with the land's song. Her words painted their trials, Yiri's tracks, Waru's stones, Kulka's rituals, Tiandri's lead, etching them into legend. The tribes listened, their faces aglow, children's eyes wide, elders nodding, unity a shared breath. Yuri's eyes glistened, his totem a legacy, his heart full. Waru's grin widened, his carved stick raised, their bond a spark of eternity. Tiandri and Kura stepped forward, their voices firm, vowing to protect the valley together, their spears planted in the earth, a pledge to the ancestors. Tiandri's dark eyes met Kura's, pride and trust unspoken, their alliance a shield against future trials. Yuri and Waru, their hands steady, planted a young acacia near the lake, its roots a symbol of hope, their laughter mingling as they pressed soil around it. Yuri's heart swelled, his totem pressed against his chest, his courage now a seed for the future. Kulka's bright eyes followed them, her heart at peace, the land's spirits stirring, a faint tremor beneath her feet, a whisper of approval. As the ritual ended, a soft rain fell, its patter a melody on the red earth, nourishing the acacia, filling the lake's banks. The tribes cheered, their faces upturned, hands outstretched, their chants rising in harmony. Kulka's voice joined theirs, her bright eyes glistening, the land's healing a gift earned through sacrifice. Tiandri's spear felt light, his dark eyes steady, the valley's promise a shared duty. Yuri's gaze lifted to the stars, their flicker brighter, his resolve aflame for generations. Yet as the rain faded, a faint dust stirred on the horizon, a subtle reminder of challenges unborn, the land's song, a call to endure.